What crazy ass story do you need to tell? TL. Doctor narrowly avoided being sent to prison for 10 to 20 years for several drug crimes and instead paid minimum fines due to some quick thinking and taking a huge risk. Late to the party, but when I was in high school and a few years after, my primary source of income was selling pot. One day I was just hanging out at home with the GF. We went to the Circle K a few houses down and got some beer. The clerk, who I knew pretty well at this point, asked if he knew where I could get a dub sack. I said sure, and that I'd be back soon. I go home and forget about it. An hour or two later I'm like, oh crap, remember, weigh it out and go back. He had already given me the money, very important detail for later, so I waited until he had no customers. He came out and we went around the icebox, just smoking and chatting. I handed him the bag. Now, there was no one around. Empty lot except for this beat up Volvo facing the record store next door. If I had been paying better attention, I may have noticed this Volvo had completely tinted windows, which seemed odd to do on a beat up Volvo. Two men get out of the car and approach us. One tall skinny guy wearing 100% denim and another guy who looks like Dog the Bounty Hunter in a beige sweater. They approach us and ask how we are doing. Me and Clark look at each other like, you know these guys? Then all of a sudden, the flash badges and yell PD. You're under arrest. And cuff us, separate us, and search us. Beige dog goes through my texts, finds a couple dubious ones, a few crumpled up 20s, starts trying to get me to admit to doing a lot of business today blah blah. Then they surprise me by walking me and my GF back to my porch, saying they've seen me come and go quite a bit and just want to make sure you don't have a pound of heroin in there, and they'll just charge me with a misdemeanor. Otherwise, it will be jail and a felony. So here we are, on my front porch, me saying there's no way I will let them in my house and to call my lawyer over and over. At one point, my roommate walks out, says hi, gets in his car and leaves. At this point, Dog explains that if I don't let him search the house, he's going to park a few squad cars on the lawn, extract everyone from the house, and wait on a warrant, and they will charge everyone in the house with every little thing they find in any room. I now know this is not legal. Then, I was just scared. My roommate that had just left was a total nerd with a great job. Straight edge. Rarely drank and never smoked or anything at all. I was terrified of him losing his job. Unfortunately for me, I had just had an opportunity to get a crop of mushrooms at a steal of a deal. My area was super dried up on mushrooms at the time, so I asked around and basically had all my deals set before I got it. This timing was perfect because just 30 feet away on the coffee table of my bedroom was 1/4 of a pound of mushrooms, neatly weighted out into ounces and 1/8. Top that with all the pot in there, it wasn't looking pretty. So, I proposed that I'll let one of them in to search just my bedroom and be done with it. I knew once I let them in they could do whatever, but I was out of options. Beige dog agrees. Canadian Tux stays with my GF, who looks terrified like WTF are you doing at me, and Dog the Sweater Hunter enters with me. I lead him upstairs and walk right past my door, which thank God was closed, and into the straight edge guy's room. Dog completely turns it over, takes out drawers, turns the mattress over, the whole shebang. As he does this, I quietly turn off the computer monitor with a background of my roommate and his GF glaring on it. Guy finds nothing, sticks with his agreement and walks me and my crap-eating grin back downstairs. My GF, probably assuming I'm going to prison for many years, is looking like she's about to die, but I'm just grinning. Guy still freaking charged me with a felony. Then they leave. Long story short, paid a lot for a great atty who was friends with the prosecutor. Since no money was seen to be exchanged, the charge was knocked down to deliverance of marijuana. The prosecutor recommended the minimum sentence. I paid an $121 fine, did 80 hours of community center at a local music venue, saw a ton of shows for free, and retired from selling. God, I hope someone reads this. When my mom was pregnant with me, she and my father divorced, and he gave up all parental rights. I've never met him or spoken to him. I've only seen a few pictures. About 2 years ago, I worked at a healthcare facility where I would float to different offices around the county based on who needed the help. This one particular morning I was checking the doctor's schedule and saw my father's name. He was scheduled to be in the office next door to where I was working, and I thought it was pretty crazy, but I most likely wouldn't even see him. The time of his appointment came, and he walked into my office straight up to me and says he had a doctor's appointment with Dr. X. My heart was racing cause I knew it was him as soon as he walked through the door. I told him Dr. X was the office next door and he left. A little while later I walked over to the other office to deliver some faxes, and on my way out he trailed behind me and I held the door for him. He said thank you, and that was my one and only interaction with my father in my 30 years of living. So me and my brother are fraternal twins. My stepmom passed away due to breast cancer when we were around 15 years old. She was like a second mother to us and had been around since we were very young, 5 years old. Now fast forward to our junior year of college. I attended a school in upstate New York while he attended a university in the state of Florida. One night I woke up in sweat with tears coming down my eyes. I had the most vivid dream. I was in a house and my stepmother was there. I knew she had passed in this dream, which was a first for me. She hugged me, told me how handsome I had become, and that she loved me. I woke up drenched in sweat thinking WTF was that. I didn't say anything to anybody and went to class. As I'm walking back to my apartment after class, I get a call from my brother. His first words were, "I know this is going to sound weird, but I had the most vivid dream about Maggie last night." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as he went on to describe the same dream I had just experienced the night prior. We've never had a twin moment like this, and I don't really know what to make of it, but it's always been a story that I wanted to tell. Was served lunch sometime during a flight. While eating, noticed that the woman next to me is slowing down in her movements, slower cutting, slower chewing, etc. Suddenly she stops completely in her movements, fork and knife in hands, half cut food on her plate, face bowed forward above her plate and nothing else. Touched her on the shoulder, pushed a little bit, asked her if everything was okay, no reaction. Couldn't really tell if she was still alive. Was it the air conditioning or her breath? No idea, didn't want to panic and frighten everyone else. You know, dead person. Made eye contact with a stewardess, point towards next to me. Couple minutes later, 5 stewardesses including co-pilot form a barrier around our seats and like in a movie tried to get a reaction accident on me. Woman wakes up, looks up and says just this one sentence, "I took really strong sleeping pills," and goes back to sleep in the same Tyrannosaurus posture. As if this has happened before, and she had anticipated this conversation, as if she knew that her mind would only be awakened long enough for one sentence. So for the entire remaining 6 to 7 hour flight, there is this lady next to me, mimicking a Tyrannosaurus, her hands still grabbing the now removed fork and knife, drooling on the table, and everyone passing by giving me this questioning look. Best flight ever. Years ago I was hitchhiking north of Richmond, Virginia when a car with 2 dudes picked me up. We got to chatting, and it turns out they were headed to their friend's place to shoot guns, and asked me if I wanted to join. I asked if his friend would be okay with a random homeless-esque fellow shooting his guns, and he said hell, just pretend to be my cousin from Seattle. So instead of sitting on the highway in 100-degree weather I spent an afternoon eating hamburgers, shooting guns, and blowing crap up with bags of tannerite on some random duty employee's woodland property. Don't remember your name Jude, but you were the man. Thanks for a great memory. When I was learning to fly at a sketchy flight school, I was doing a pre-flight check flight, close to the end of the program. I was doing the run-up in a Cessna when I smelled something. Do you smell that? Smells like gas, I say. Instructor, 21Y/O, shrugs. Annoyed, I open the door, and there is a spreading puddle of avgas under the plane. Shit. The instructor panics, "Stay in the plane, I'll get help," and runs off. As soon as I got the engine off, I noped out of there and watched the plane dump all its fuel on the runway. They kindly gave me another plane, and instructor. They fixed their plane, and a month later, I read about the same plane crashing due to fuel issues. 1 fatality. No significant repercussions for company. A little while back my roommate was contacted by a wealthy man in the area who wanted to pay her to be his live-in pet for an entire month. She thought that this was a cute easy way of saying that it was a sugar daddy/baby arrangement. Turns out what he actually meant was that she would be given room, board and a very healthy allowance to spend a large portion of her day dressed as a cat, walking on her hands and knees, eating out of a bowl, using a litter box, and, yes, sleeping in a little cage at night. Sex wasn't even on the table. He was only interested in having a human cat for a month. She seriously considered the offer for a weekend, and then politely declined. Edit. This allowance would have covered her college tuition for the semester. He knew what he wanted, and was very motivated. My dad went to secondary school with John Lennon, and was a couple years older than him. Dad was known for playing the drums, and being quite musical, and one day John asks him whether he'd like to be the drummer in a band he's forming. Dad was keen, but my granny said he needed to prioritize studying, and so he didn't join. The band formed, and were called the Quarrymen, and I think a guy called Colin was the drummer instead of Dad, who I believe was later replaced by Pete Best, and then Ringo as they changed to the Silver Beatles, and then the Beatles. I like to imagine that in an alternative universe my dad said yes, and that was history. I don't even mind that I wouldn't have been born if this had been the outcome. He really deserved to have had that lifetime. But maybe the universe wanted you more than it wanted your dad in the Beatles. Edit. I love you guys, and I really appreciate your recognition, but if you really want to spend money on something, please find a good charity instead of this goofy Reddit gold and silver crap. I'd recommend Child's Play if you need a suggestion. 3. When I was like 8, I was running to catch up with my parents as we were walking down our street. I came to an intersection right as a car pulled up. At the exact moment he stopped, I fricked up and tripped. Rather than eat crap, though, I somehow managed to do a perfect front roll and keep running in one smooth motion. From his perspective, this dumbass kid ran in front of his car, did some freaking weird ninja crap, and kept running without looking back. It's the only even remotely cool thing I've ever done in my life, and he was the only witness. Don't know how interesting it is, but a few years ago I'd go to college in the morning and leave at like midnight because I didn't have a PC and needed to work on homework at school. One time on the last train ride home, I had to catch 2 trains and 2 buses each way to get there and back. We were coming into the last station where I'd get off. There was this Asian guy acting a bit strange the whole ride. He gets up and stands in the middle of the car, and as the train brakes coming into the station he falls flat on his face from a full standing position, lays there until the train stops, stands up, dusts himself off, and walks out of the open doors like nothing happened. I saw this guy doing it like 5 other separate times, and since I was used to it at that point I enjoyed looking out for the riders' reactions. Plenty more slightly weird stuff happened on my late night subway rides home. I really enjoyed the entertainment. I stole my own car back once. I used to restore classic cars. I had the most valuable one I've ever had at a body shop, and he took forever to finish it. He had painted other cars for me, but apparently developed a drug problem. I would check on the car every week to see if there was any progress. Finally, after a year he told me he painted 90% of it, but he's asking for more money than we originally agreed. I drive there on a Friday afternoon unannounced and see my car outside the shop, worth a ton of money, with the shop owner nowhere in sight. His neighbor told me he had left the car outside for 3 days and several people have tried to steal it. So I call a tow truck and tow it to my garage right away. On my home the shop owner calls me over and over again. He thought somebody stole the car. He kept calling me for months. I never responded. I was an exchange student in Poland a few years ago. I was freshly 18 and had almost no experience with alcohol. 3rd week of school, we had a dance and I decided to attend. It was not at all like the school dances we have in the US. First off, it was held at a club, downtown. Little odd, but okay. Second, it had a bar. I was in the senior class in high school, and we were all 18, so we could drink. I was not ready for that at all. Third, I had just started smoking the week before. My high school had a smoking gazebo, and probably 1/3 of my class smoked. I started smoking to make friends lol. This turned into the perfect storm of me getting absolutely freaking crap-faced. After blacking out shortly, I was suddenly outside smoking, and my friends and I were walking to a nearby 24H liquor store. I walked in, visibly inebriated, and bought a mid-sized bottle of vodka. The cashier was hesitant, but when she heard I was American, basically just said frick it, go ham. Probably another 2 hours and another blackout later the police arrive. They start yelling at my class president for wandering in the road. For some reason drunk me decides I should get involved, even though I barely speak Polish, and I'm super freaking wasted. I walk up to the cop, and in the worst Polish I've ever spoken, tried to say leave him alone. But what came out was leave, and then a pile of vomit all over his boots. Oh frick, this is it I thought. I'm going to get arrested and deported. The cop looked at me and said in English, "You an American?" "Yes sir," I replied, knowing I was in deep crap. The cop looked me up and down, looked at the bottle of vodka in my hand, and said, "You drink crap vodka. Come with me." I was put into the back of the police car, and he started to drive away. My heart sank. 3 weeks into what was supposed to be the best year of my life, it was already over. But he stopped 2 blocks away at the 24H liquor store, brought me inside, and bought me a 100ml bottle of Zabrałka vodka. He said, "This is good and cheap. Welcome to Poland. Now let me take you back to your friends." As we pulled back up to the club, he leaned back and said, "Watch this." He turned on the lights and siren and 3 or 4 kids ran down the block. He was laughing uncontrollably. He unlocked the door, and as I climbed out he shouted, "Be safe, friend." 20 minuets later I blacked out again, and the next thing I remembered was waking up on the kitchen floor of the house I was living in, feeling like absolute crap. My host mother had made coffee and said, "Damn, you had a night, huh?" And that was the craziest night I ever had. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like for more future content.